Okay, we're going to get this next session started. And we're going to start off, as Gabriel had mentioned, we'll go ahead and start off with the Q&A. And so any questions that you have that have not been covered, or, you know, they don't have to be necessarily exactly related, but, you know, be a little on the fringe. But if you have any questions, now's the time to ask them. So I'm open. If you guys want to start it off. Yes, sir.
When you were teaching, I thought, are they still doing this big Hanukkah service in Israel, Jerusalem?
This big Hanukkah service.
You know, the big one with the big candles are lit?
No, not like that, because that was part of the temple. Okay. However, the as you'll see on street corners of major cities across the world, Rabbi Schneerson, Menachem Mendel Schneerson, blessed memory, the Chabad rabbi, he instituted, and he got a lot of flack from this, but he instituted public menorah lightings, Hanukkah lightings, specifically for Hanukkah in cities that the rabbis represented in those cities. They would go out and light a 10-foot menorah or 20-foot menorah or whatever each of the nights of Hanukkah out in like the town square or in front of the Capitol or in front of their synagogue, just some public place that's very noticeable.
Do they do some of those here in the States?
All over. Yeah.
Yes.
Destin has one, which that's not too far.
Where?
Destin.
Any place where there's a Chabad house, they're going to do a public menorah lighting, which I don't know why maybe next year we shouldn't explore doing that here, just out in the lawn or out in the parking lot or doing something where we have a giant PVC menorah, we like.
We got to build those things.
Yeah.
We got one. Last year.
Anybody good with PVC around here?
We got one.
Really?
We got a menorah.
She's got a
Okay.
comment in the back.
If it's not in Jerusalem, we'll do a big public.
She got a comment in the
She was
back.
going to say something about that.
Oh, I was just saying, last year there was a public menorah lighting on Rutgers, so I don't know.
For Rutgers.
I don't know that it was specifically Messianic or not. We wanted it more than Rutgers.
I would doubt
I
it.
think it would be really great if Yeshua was the light of the world at the front of it.
Yeah.
I didn't know they did that at Fort Rutgers. Wow. That's cool.
Or in Destin.
Yeah. The only thing about Yeshua is the light of the world on a big public menorah like that
Not on it, JB, like around it.
is that it may appear to the Jewish community as you're trying to hijack something that belongs to them, and basically the whole Antiochus thing again. So think about it, pray about it before you do anything.
Yeah, because etiquette has a lot to do with it.
Yes.
What would you say?
Etiquette.
You don't want to draw attention to yourself, and the first thing the Jewish community sees is something that seems to them to be antagonistic.
Are you saying it could have been?
Right.
There's a difference between a menorah and a Hanukkah.
Yes.
Can you explain the difference?
Okay. So a menorah has how many branches? A typical menorah? 7. Okay. A Hanukkah, not only does it have 9, but one of them has to be set off from the others. It can be taller. It can be to the back. It can be off to the side. But it has to be offset somehow to show that it is not one of the 8 lights. Okay? And because it's the shamash, it's the servant candle. Now, there's a reason for that halakhically as well. Because one of the things that we're not supposed to do with the Hanukkah candles that we can read this in my book here in just a minute, or actually it's in my notes here, is that we are not supposed to make use of the Hanukkah candles for normal purposes. We're not supposed to have the Hanukkah sitting there lit up and everything, and then we read our devotional from its light. Okay, we're not supposed to use it for normal purposes. So the sages said, that's going to be a difficult thing for people to do, especially in the ancient times before electricity and stuff like that. That's going to be a hardship in such a way, and so they were very lenient. They wanted to provide ways that they wouldn't make things excessively hard on the Jewish community. And so they said, let's add this extra candle that we can use to light the other candles with, and have it be a servant candle, and show that it's distinct and separate from the others, and not one of the candles is for these holy purposes, and have it set off to the side, and it's a normal candle. It doesn't have any necessarily sanctity to it, and therefore the light that comes from it and the others by chance we can use for normal circumstances, normal purposes. Okay, and so that eased up that prohibition on that. But the difference is, besides the number of candlesticks, is that a menorah has 7 branches, and it was specifically used for the temple. And technically, we're not supposed to light 7 branch menorahs. Okay, we're only supposed to light other types, 6, 8, 9, stuff like that, because it's almost as if we're taking that sanctity from the temple, and we have no regard for its rebuilding and things like that. Okay, so by withholding from that, we keep the sanctity of the temple menorah, and we look forward to and with anticipation of its restoration. Okay.
Does your little book, and I'll shut up.
No, don't shut up.
Does your little book give the details of lighting the candles?
Yes, it does. Yes, it does. I'm going to go over that here in just a minute. So, another thing is that the sages say that the Hanukkah, the way, the what, in order to really fulfill the mitzvah properly, you want to have the materials that you're lighting to last for at least a half an hour. So they need to be a decent quality. And so they say the oil with the wick is the best option. And if you can do that, if you have means to do that, that's the best option. But the candles that are the wax candles, paraffin, are as good as well. They're acceptable. Okay, so that's what you see mainly is the candles. But I've seen the oil candles, and it'd be cool to have something like that. But that's one of the big things.
So those candles, like you have there, how long do they last?
Half an hour maybe?
Yeah.
So they're good?
45 minutes maybe.
So,
Depends on if the wind's blowing. If the wind's blowing, it'll last about 5 minutes.
Yeah. Or the AC vents blowing out.
Right.
Last year we had to use birthday candles because all of the candles were gone. We couldn't find anything to put on the menorah. So we put birthday candles in.
Right. Hey, and here's a tip. So one of the things we're supposed to do, we're sort of the Q&A and the how-to is all getting sort of intermingled. So we'll just put all this together. But one of the things that we're supposed to do in how-to is in doing this actual commemoration of Hanukkah and the celebrating of Hanukkah and proclaiming of Hanukkah is that we're supposed to put the Hanukkah, the 9-branch menorah, we're supposed to put it in a public place for people to see it. Okay? Because we are supposed to be publicizing the miracle. Because Antiochus, one of the things he didn't want the Jewish people to do, he didn't want them spreading this light. Okay? And that's the goal of what we're supposed to be doing. We're supposed to be spreading this light. We're supposed to be sharing it with others, making it public. Okay? And so, with that, we're supposed to set it, the first option, the preferable option according to the halakha is to set it outside your door, a certain amount of space in front of your home. But most of us can't do that today. We have fire hazards and we have all this other kind of stuff. So the next preferable thing is to set it within the windowsill of your home, facing outwards, near the front door. Okay? But here's a tip. Do not leave them unattended.
pull your blinds
That's right.
all
And make sure your blinds are all the way up
There's a
and your
story
curtains are
behind this.
completely out of the way. Otherwise, you will have large
I
flames.
feel like there's a story behind this.
There is a story behind this. Fortunately, it didn't happen to us, but unfortunately, it had happened to friends of ours. Their blinds and their drapes went up in flames. Yeah. So,
Or isn't there something that you could get for the window that isn't actually fire? Like, you know
There
what I
is.
mean? Like the light ones?
there's electronic ones that
Yeah,
you can get.
do ours in the house and put the electronic ones in the window if you're a
Mhm.
renter or you don't want it
Yeah.
yourself.
Is that okay to use? Because we have the electronic one that just plugs in and you just push the button every day.
You know, I meant to check into that and the halakhic status of that, but I think they're okay. I think they're sold by. I think Art Scroll has some, don't they? I can't remember.
Because we just set it in the window. Oh, we have
Yeah.
ours in the house, but we set it in front of the blind and
Yeah.
you can see it from the road.
Right. Yeah, it's a good alternative there, especially like I said, if you're renting or you have liabilities that you need
I didn't know
to
if it was
really be
okay, so
cognizant
we
of.
kind of use it in addition to.
Yeah, that's good. It's always good to be cautious there. Let me see if I have anything to do this. So one of the things in relationship to lighting the Hanukkah candle is that a person, the halakha says, basically the legal ruling is that a person should be willing to sell his cloak or even to beg in order to get enough money to purchase the oil to light the Hanukkah candles, because it's that important. Okay, where it doesn't really require it for the other festivals, it requires it for Hanukkah specifically because this is the focal point of the holiday. It is the mitzvah to publicly proclaim that to the world, this miracle, to announce it to the world. And so it's considered that important. Now, they do make a distinction between the biblical festivals and Hanukkah. They say Hanukkah is not a biblical festival, it's a rabbinic festival. Okay? And they say we have no bones about that. So we're not going to put extra burdens upon people, but in order to fulfill this, if you're going to fulfill this, if you're going to do this, then that's what the length that you're going to go to do that.
Which is kind of like is almost parabolic for if you want to be a light to the world in a spiritual sense, that's going to come at a cost.
Right.
You have to be willing to give
That's good.
everything up in order to fulfill that requirement in a sense.
That's good. Yeah.
As you light each candle, is there something to say?
Okay, let's just begin that. Okay, I'll start from the very beginning again because it's a very good place to start. And so you would take your Hanukkah. Now this Hanukkah evidently doesn't have a front and doesn't have a back, which is sort of cool because you don't have to worry about messing up. But some of them, they have a specific front to it. And then what we do now, there was let me get in this so we can have it for the recording. People hear me better. But
it should be able to pick you up okay if
okay.
you're close enough to it.
So there was a debate between the schools of Hillel and the schools of Shammai. Okay? Okay. Okay, so let's give it a little bit of background. The schools of Hillel, the schools of Shammai. So there are two rabbinic schools of thought that had decided this man named Hillel and a man named Shammai. Hillel was the grandfather of Gamaliel. Now, Gamaliel, if you remember, taught the Apostle Paul. He was his teacher. Okay? Hillel was his grandfather. And Hillel he is the beloved rabbi to this day. Okay? And about 95% of Yeshua's teachings and his rulings agree with Hillel. Hillel was from the Galilee. Yeshua was from the Galilee. Shammai was down in the south in Judea, the Jerusalem area. And so Shammai and Hillel, personally, they had disagreements and they had differing opinions on things like this. And they had agreements on 2 or 3 different things, but their disciples after them had many, 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 many disagreements, which the writings of the rabbis, the Torah, the Talmud, the Mishnah, they go into detail explaining all these disputes between these two schools of thought. Now, one of these schools of thought, backtrack just for a second. Shammai was the more stringent of the two. Okay, he was the more precise, more, no leeway. Hillel was the more gracious. He was the more, understanding and tried to make it easy for people. Okay, and I'll just give a sidetrack so you'll understand the fullness of what I'm talking about. So there was a Gentile. This is a famous story that most people in here will probably know. There's a Gentile that came to Rabbi Shammai and said, convert me. Now, but he didn't say just that. He said, convert me and make me a convert to Judaism. But he said, while I stand on one foot. Okay? In other words, I don't have time for years and years and years of study and training and all that kind of stuff. I want to do this, but just make it easy on me. Make it simple. Make it whatever. Shammai's response to that was, you foolish man. And he takes a builder's cubit and he flogs him and chases him out of his house. Okay? He comes, again, he does the same thing, but he comes to Hillel this time. And then he says, convert me and teach me the Torah while I stand on one foot. And Hillel says something that may sound really familiar to you. He says, what is hateful to your neighbor, do not do. The rest is commentary. Go and study. Okay? And so he basically said, let's go. He said, I'm ready to take you on. And he made it easy on him. He said basically, hey, you've got to a great point. You've got this desire. Now let's create some discipline for it so that we can complete it. And so the schools of Hillel and schools of Shammai debated about how to light the Hanukkah candle. Okay? But they had different theories and different reasons for their arguments. Okay? So let me get these candles out real quick. I have to break open your box here. These are Gabriel and Stacy's. They've been gracious enough to allow me to use them to demo, so I hope I don't break them before the day's over here. And when you buy a box of Hanukkah candles, they give you enough and a few extras to last the whole time. And you're probably going to break a few if you're like me. Okay? So, and I'm just going to put these in. I'm not going to put them in the correct order. I'm just put them in a random right here just for demonstration purposes. But Hillel and Shammai disagreed on how these should be done. So Shammai said, start off with these 8 candles for the 8 days of Hanukkah, and then light 8 candles on the first night, second night light 7, third night light 6, and then 5, this one's tight, 4, 3, 2, 1, so forth. Okay? So Shammai said, we're gonna take away each candle because what we're doing was counting down where we have 8 days of Hanukkah the first night. Second night we have 7 days left, and so forth. Okay? Hillel said, school of Hillel said, no. Says we should increase the candles because the joy of a mitzvah should always increase day by day. Okay? And our light should be increasing. And so that has become the ruling of today. We light 1 candle the first night, 2 the second, 3 the third, and so forth until the 8th night. We have 8 plus the shamash in our Hanukkah. Okay? Now, how do we do this? There's a precision to that. If you've learned anything about Judaism, there's always precision. And a debate about precision. You notice, you know what a mezuzah is? Okay, a mezuzah is this thing outside the doorway that's tilted here and that has the scroll in it. And people come in by and they touch and they kiss as a sign of affection for the commandments. If you notice, the people that know what they're doing, they tilt the mezuzah at a 45-degree angle, roughly. And that settled the debate between the rabbis of whether it was supposed to be placed vertically or horizontally. Right. Okay. So in this, we put the candles in. We put the candles in right to left. Okay? So we put the candles in this way. We go just like we would read Hebrew, right to left. Day by day, we add our candles. We light, however, left to right. We light the newest candle first and then go backwards to the candles that existed previously. So we put them in right to left.
Place them right to left.
And then light left to right with the newest candles first. If you remember the newest candles first, that'll help.
So, Darren,
yes.
Tell me what night 1 configuration would look like. So now you're going to light the shamash?
You'll light the shamash first, and then we'll light this. Okay. Night 2, let's do night 2. Okay.
So start with
all right, but night 2, we're going to say the one that's in day 1 is removed, it's gone, you start with a new one, correct?
Okay, yeah, you're right. So watch this. Yes. So night 1, we light this, right. And then we use the shamash, right. The servant candle. I think I broke that. Sorry. No? It's just loose or something weird. And you light this. This burns to the ground. This burns to the ground. These
right.
are gone.
Right.
Next night, new shamash,
right.
New first candle, new second candle.
Right. Yeah.
right?
Yeah, I understand that, but
Yeah,
I'm not
I just
sure.
want to
And you
make
light
sure.
this one,
And then you light the shamash, then you light this one,
the newest
the
one.
second day, and then you light the first day.
Then day 3, you'll start all over with
Yep.
4
Exactly.
candles.
Right.
And then when you go outward, I did this last year and I messed it all up.
So once you go to here,
Uh-huh.
on day 5, you're here.
I was going out and going in,
Uh-huh.
and that's how I messed up.
Yep. Yep.
So it's probably best to put this thing on top of like some paper towels or something.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
There's
Or
a lot of
aluminum
melted wax
foil.
going on here.
Yeah.
Aluminum foil or something so it doesn't catch on
Yeah.
fire.
Yeah, that's even better. Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Picture your paper towels on fire.
Now,
The towels, rookie mistake.
I think you had asked, is there something we're supposed to, or somebody did, is there something we're supposed to say? Is there a blessing? Or whatever like that. So, there's a blessing. There's blessings every day that you light. There's a special blessing on the first day. And so the blessing that we say before we light the candles here, actually we actually light the shamash. We light the servant candle first, and then we recite this blessing. We say, "Blessed are you, Lord our God, King of the universe, who sanctified us with your commandments and commanded us to kindle the lights of Hanukkah." Okay? And then we thank God for the miracles that He has done and allowed us to reach the season for the first day. Let me see. No, that's the third blessing. We actually thank Him specifically for the miracles that happened. Okay? And it says, "Blessed are you, O Lord our God, King of the universe, who made miracles for our forefathers in those days at this time." Now, I've included, which I didn't include one. I just said that, if we're not Jewish, like I'm not Jewish, and so that first commandment, that first blessing says, "Who has commanded us to light the lights of Hanukkah?" For us who are not are not Jewish, that's not a requirement for us. And so that's not necessary. The second one, I've got an alternate for this. Instead of saying, "Who made miracles for our forefathers, who has made miracles for the children of Israel in those days at that time." Okay? It's the alternate there that you can choose to do. And then the third one is said only on the first night of Hanukkah, because what we do is we always bless the Lord for allowing us to reach a certain time in our lives, a certain thing that we get to enjoy. This is called the Shehekianu. And we bless the Lord for the ability to come to that season again. And it says, "Blessed are you, O Lord our God, King of the universe, who has kept us alive, sustained us, and brought us to this season." Okay? And then your lighting continues. You don't have to do something for each of the candles, just that, before you begin the whole thing. Questions about that? Yes.
Last year, we had readings of certain scriptures, and we said a blessing every single time. And you're saying that it's not necessary
A blessing for each candle or each night?
each night.
Yes, we do
Yes.
those blessings each night.
And then as families, we can create our own kind of like things that we might want to read every night.
Exactly.
Or
Exactly.
games that we might want to play that night, or
Right.
what making
Exactly. And so that's what you should do. You should design each night to be fun, to be meaningful, and to display to the world that something special is happening. Right? As Gabriel said, this is my book, and what I've done is I've given at the beginning the general overview of Hanukkah. Excuse me. I've given the first chapter is called Discover. It's an introduction to Hanukkah. The second chapter is called Celebrate, the basics of celebrating Hanukkah. That includes the things that I just talked about, the blessings and so forth. Chapter 3 is a collection of devotions, one devotion for each night. And what I've done in this is created a character trait to ponder and to think about and to think how we can have more of this in our life for that specific night. So the first night is ahava, love. Okay, love is the basis for everything, right? Second night, First night is avodah. I apologize, I read it wrong. The first night is avodah, service. Okay, we are to be servants. The Second night is ahava, love. We're supposed to do everything in love. The third night is tefillah, it's prayer. Prayer should be a priority for us. The fourth night is emunah, it's faith. Night 5 is teshuvah, repentance. Night 6, anava, humility. Night 7, tzedakah, which is charity and righteousness. And the 8th night is not necessarily a character trait, but it's a commission. It's tikkun olam. It's repair of the world. And our job to make a difference, as Gabriel was talking about earlier, in repairing this world, a damaged world that we are stewards over. Okay?
Let me ask you.
Yes. Go for it.
Do you, when you light that candle, does it stay on until it burns completely out?
Yes. So one of the things in Hanukkah candles, Shabbat candles, festival candles, we're not permitted to put those candles out unless it poses a danger. They're supposed to burn out on their own accord and just completely do. And that's why, like Shabbat candles, they're small candles and they're limited time. You're supposed to let it last, a good while to carry in the Shabbat. So they're generally around a 3-hour candle. This is maybe an 30, 45-minute candle, something like that, if that. And so these are designed to last much shorter because they don't need that time frame, especially with as much heat as it puts out with all those together and stuff like that. But traditionally you don't put out candles, especially on Shabbat. That's just it's one of the prohibitions. But go ahead.
It's also customary that each member of the household have their own Hanukkah.
Particularly males, actually, but it can be extended.
So, like, for our household, we have 4 Hanukkahot, or 4 menorahs, if you want to call them that. And so you have to take, at the last night of Hanukkah, you times 9 lights on that thing by 4. And it is blazing in there. There's a lot of heat that's being thrown off. So it's intense.
Yep.
So I keep a habit of keeping a fire extinguisher close by, actually. Because, I've got boys and a bunch of fire. I'm like, what could go wrong? But I also find it, like you were saying, kind of off of what you were saying, Joy, I find it as a great opportunity to the neighborhood kids that, like, my kids will end up playing with throughout the year. I invite them over for one of the nights of Hanukkah, and inevitably the parents will come with them or something like that. And they've never experienced anything like that. So to talk them through it, but then to talk them through it in a way that glorifies Yeshua, who they probably already are following to a certain extent, is a really big eye-opener to them. It's a really neat experience. The kids love it. And when you have that much fire, you would think there would be craziness, but they're actually like mesmerized by it and like almost like hypnotized by all the fire, and they're just like sitting there watching. And it's a good opportunity to read that devotion through, and it's a really neat teaching experience.
My son, I have two Xavier just in front of it, just like that.
Yeah.
It's really neat that you said that. I don't know if you've heard of Hebrew for Christians. Have you heard of him?
Yes.
He has some readings too, like that. And he encourages us as families to kind of build our own family traditions, like something that we might eat on the first night, and then playing ping pong, or together, or like having a devotion and talking about working through, like you said, in the matter of love in our family. How does that apply to a child? How does that apply to an adult? I think it's very memorable. I know people who give gifts, people who don't give gifts. I'm not against either. At first I was kind of like, but because of that whole, Jewish Christian. But I don't personally see anything wrong with giving gifts, especially to children.
Exactly.
But why do I give you this gift? Because I think you're precious and you're loved, and I want to, and this is the gift of love that He's given. You can turn anything into something good as long as you're not crossing those boundaries. Okay, so you brought up a good topic, tradition. Tradition is so important, and we have bashed it in the church. But let me tell you this: who in this room has been raised in the church? Who has wonderful memories of Christmas and just warm fuzzies when you see, when you smell, when you see the lights, when you hear certain songs? You get this like, that's cozy. You know what I mean? That's and it's just like, that's comfortable. That's so nice. That's so. We have to create that for our children within this Jewish context. Okay, we have to make it something that's beautiful,
something that's wonderful, something that appeals to their sight, to their senses of smell, to all these sensory perceptions. They need to have these sensory experiences to connect them to those events. So exactly, create those fond memories and fondness and love of this. And so two of the things that we do as a family as a tradition that always Hanukkah, and one of them I'm not sure even how it became a Hanukkah tradition because it has nothing to. Well, neither one of them had anything to do with Hanukkah. It's just it happens to be that it became a tradition for Hanukkah that our kids just look forward to. Is one, that's when we have our yearly viewing of The Sound of Music. And the other one is we have a Hanukkah sushi party. Okay?
It's neat.
Right. And so our kids are just, they're totally pumped about the sushi party. They're like, who are we inviting? What all are we going to have? What kind of ingredients can we add this year? And, all this kind of stuff. And so they're totally stoked and excited about that every single year, And so it's creating those lasting memories of those special events. And then what Gabriel just shared, it's all about proclaiming the miracle publicly. And when you invite people to your house, that's exactly what you're doing. When he invites his children's friends and their parents and stuff like that, that's exactly what we're doing. We're publicizing this miracle, and we're also attesting to Yeshua as the light of the world in that process, right? Through our character, through our speech, and the things that we connect with the scriptures and the devotions that we share and all that kind of stuff, and the way our family is represented and showing the light of Yeshua to this outside family. Yes?
Do you give gifts on
Our family doesn't, but I don't have a problem with that. The reason why we don't do it is because we had gift overload for Christmas that our family tried to continue to push on us, and they just wanted to move that from Christmas to Hanukkah. And we were sick of commercialized Christmas before we even knew about Hanukkah, years and years and years back, and we were just like, this is choking us, And
money.
Right, money pit. And
I went for a long time without, and this year I thought about it, not necessarily wrapping and putting a bow on it, but having something like special. Xavier and I play ping pong.
Right.
Time is a very special gift you can give. One that will last long.
But I guess you're right, kind of like, if it's just about the gifts, that's how I was. And I just wanted to know how you felt about it.
Yep.
What about you, Gabriel?
We do not do gifts on Hanukkah. I don't know why, we do gifts during Sukkot.
Yeah, that's what I've done.
And Purim. We do gifts at Purim, which is traditionally, it says in the book of Esther that we're supposed to bring each other gifts during Purim. Or, during the Feast of Esther or Purim.
Yep.
So, it's really the only two times. And it's not on the scale of like Christmas, it's usually
Something small.
something small, yeah. But I give them the gift of my time.
Yeah.
We do gifts at home.
Yeah. And there's nothing wrong with that.
One night, like all the gifts at one night, or do you spread it out through all?
Spread it out.
Yep. And that's a perfect way to do that. Your kids will always remember that, and they will love that, and they'll cherish that.
We kind of do like a mixture on ours. We've done Hanukkah for several years now, and so we do like our own devotional that we've just kind of made over the years,
Great.
where we pick a focus for each night, whether it's peace or prayer or family. And since we live kind of off the streets, there's no way for anybody to see our menorah. We could literally put it on top of our house, and people probably wouldn't notice it. We kind of make a scene of we post a lot on social media so people can see, but we also have days that we do service outside of our home to people, whether it be at nursing homes, schools, people that just are in need, just to get the focus off of the kids getting something, because we did go straight from Christmas into Hanukkah, an abrupt change over like 1 year Christmas, the next year we were completely Hanukkah. So we do nights that they do get a gift, maybe like 3 out of Hanukkah, different times that they get something, and the rest of the time it's about serving others. And we always, every night, everybody has to share a miracle, either from the Word or from our personal lives where God said a miracle. And it's brought in a lot of our neighbors, kids' friends, family members, and all that You'd be surprised at how much is hearing about miracles and what God has done, especially if you can share something in your own life. Really ministers to people.
I got a question.
Yes.
How do you deal with non-Hebrew roots people? Say, in our case, we have children that don't do Hanukkah, but they still do Christmas.
So adult children that are on their own doing Christmas. Is that what you're saying? So the question, in case everybody didn't hear, is how do you deal with family, right, that doesn't do Hanukkah with you? They still do Christmas or something like that. So that's a very difficult place to be. It's a challenge, and you have to be, unlike we were the first several years, you have to be gracious. You have to be thoughtful, empathetic. You have to be thinking of the other person and how they're going to take things. One of the things that we've transitioned to in doing over the years is that even though we don't do Christmas, and that totally broke our parents' heart, completely shattered their hearts, and my grandparents, we have tried to, over the years since then, realizing what damage we had done, try to fix that in going overboard in our love and our service to our family. And then even going so far as a few years back, we went ahead and attended one of the family Christmas parties and didn't really participate in certain things, but we were there and we loved on people and stuff like that. But, probably won't do it again. I mean, if we do, it may be years down the road. But another thing is just calling family and saying Merry Christmas. Even though that's not what we do. But it's to them. It's because what we've done is we have changed to honor Messiah, but in their eyes, what we've done is changed to dishonor Messiah. Okay, and so what we're trying to do is to say, hey, I want to acknowledge your recognition of Messiah and your understanding of where you are right now.
I just had somebody give me some really great advice this year in Tampa at Tequila. One of the things that when we first walk into this is we become so separate. And he does that for a reason. He pulls us off into the wilderness and he cleans us up. But we don't stay there. We're meant to be in the world but not of the world, right? So we are the two things that when we're in Messiah and he's leading us this far is to be relational with people who are not like us. If we do not, the world will not be reached. Second is when we know our identity, we can go to those places and not be moved.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
So when I first came back, the very first thing that I wanted me to do was go back to my old church because they had thought I denied Christ and sit down with them, and that's all I talked about was Christ. So that they know and love on them.
Yeah.
Now, do I go every time their door's open? No, I've been a couple times. There's, you know what I mean? Like, so if God's got you in a place where you can go to this place and not get all those warm fuzzies again and not be a part of it, but you're showing respect and honor to someone else and loving them where they're at, isn't that what he did with us?
Yeah.
So, relational and identity. If we have those two things, we can move mightily for the kingdom of God, I believe.
Yes.
For us, it was, we celebrated Hanukkah and Christmas before we were connected to the Messianic community. We, my husband and I, began to just fall in love with Israel and, the all over thing and all that. And when we, realized and learned about, what Christmas really was and all that, we just put it up the tree. My husband was floored. It was him. He's the one that was crushed. He enjoyed the tree and relaxed. So we would just put lights up, now. And but it was like my mom knows why I don't put up the tree. We still celebrate. We go with them. We eat dinner with them, and we love them. But the main thing for me is letting them know that we still believe in Jesus, or Yeshua, that we have not left Him. So that's
So with our family, it was a little difficult because we lived a distance from my family and her family. Both of our families lived in the same area. We lived a few hours away. So it made it convenient in a way that they knew that we weren't just going to jump, and run to there every time that something happened, and be at every event and stuff like that. And so it made it the transitional easy, but it still made it difficult because that was the one time of the year that they really expected us to be there. And our children were young too, and that made it even more difficult. We had, I think we just had our second child, so we had like a 2-year-old and infant, or maybe a 3-year-old and infant, and so that was very difficult on them. And so, if I could give any advice, don't cut off people like that, and don't throw things on people. We told them on the spur of the moment. We sort of got cornered when they started drawing names for the gift exchange in July. And so we're like, we got to talk. And so we didn't have that gentle conversation and easing into things, like we really wanted to do, because we had thought we had plenty of time to figure out a solution and a plan, but it got thrown on us pretty early. We were unprepared.
I think it can offend people, especially if you've done those things with those people, then all of a sudden you don't. I'm back now near my family, and I'm just thinking, oh my gosh, it's about that time, and what do I do? Because I think that they feel offended because we're now saying that's wrong. And I used to come off I'm just very ashamed in the very beginning. I'm sure we've all been there. And now how do I deal with that? Because I don't want to hurt anybody. Like somebody just mentioned to me, oh, is your husband going to be for Christmas? And I'm like, oh boy, here we go. And it's like, and I just told him we don't have to discuss it. We don't have to argue with it. But this is where I believe he was born, and but because if you've done it with somebody for so long and you stop and they know what type of person you are, they kind of know that you feel that it's wrong, and it makes them think that you're actually saying they're wrong.
Right.
Rather than saying it.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yep.
But don't you say they're wrong?
Oh.
I think
You are, right?
Well, I used to think that, but now I think we all are doing what we have the knowledge to do.
Exactly. What he gives us.
Right. And so, whatever level or whatever information that you're given, you're accountable for, like we talked about earlier.
Yeah.
And so, who am I to say that you're wrong? Because you're doing the most with what's been revealed to you.
I just don't want to hurt anybody.
Right.
I think one of the things that I've developed the habit of doing is when people ask me, what are you doing for Christmas? Where are you going to be for Christmas this year? And we've kind of slowly taken Christmas out of our familial equation and celebrating everything. I just say, we actually don't celebrate Christmas, but in the same breath,
right,
I say, we actually celebrate the birth of Messiah during the season of the Feast of Tabernacles.
Mm-hmm.
Because right away when they hear the words, we actually don't celebrate Christmas, they equate me to being an atheist,
right.
Non-Yeshua
follower.
That's what I was
Exactly,
going to say,
yeah.
because I noticed that people will say,
yeah,
oh, I can see the reaction, and I started telling them, I celebrate the birth of Christ. I don't celebrate Christmas, but I definitely celebrate the birth of Christ. They're like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
And then they just open up and want to
Exactly.
hear
a
about
lot more.
It immediately diffuses that.
That's kind of what I said, and then he wanted to argue. He said, whoa, we don't have to argue, because he feels hurt that it's kind of like, it almost takes away the closeness of relationships. This is when everybody's together,
I think
So
a
finding
lot-
other times to be together with them is another.
I think a lot of what we struggle with during this time is our human want to mix two worlds. We are learning something that is true and it is right. And I can tell you honestly, I've never told anybody I didn't celebrate Christmas. I've never told my family I don't celebrate Christmas. I've never not. Every year since we started Hanukkah or this walk, when my family got together for Christmas, I took a gift. I sat there with them. But just the pictures of me at Hanukkah or the pictures of me aggravated the life out of everybody that saw me. So it's not always a matter of you saying something. It is they see your walk and they see what you're doing. I've never told anyone that I thought they shouldn't do Christmas. That's my dad. I said, no, I've never sat my brother down and said, hey, this is not the birth of Jesus. Hey, I don't celebrate Christmas because whatever. But is he mad as everything at me because I post Hanukkah? You better believe it.
Oh, yeah.
Because it's just a matter of, it's a spiritual thing. Everything, the dark is going to fight the light. Every time you light and you shine, everything dark around you is going to respond to it. And I just try to be at peace with it. Am I showing love to my brother when I celebrate Hanukkah? You better believe I am. And I don't have to sitting down and say, well, look, I know this is what your family does, and this is what my family does. I've never had to do it.
You know what it is?
They'll grow further. They're getting to a place where they want to spend less and less time. They don't ask us to do it anymore, but it's not because we've ever confronted them with the truth. The truth is just kind of confronted by your actions more so than your words. And I guess I just really feel at peace about it. So I feel so there's so much joy in Hanukkah. On any day that we celebrate, whether it has a gift or it has a scripture, whatever, there's literally so much joy in my home that I don't seem to struggle with how anybody else feels about it or Christmas so much.
You know, I don't have a father to teach me because I'm old, for one thing, but to teach me how to love this time, and to enjoy it, so I want my Heavenly Father to let this be.
That's right.
Just for me, and to bring the joy that I've never had at Christmas time. I haven't had a Christmas tree in about 10 years, and I never liked a Christmas tree. I did not celebrate Easter, and I don't like Easter, and I never understood why. In 2013, I'm starting to journal, and I'm writing to Adonai and Yeshua and praising them and just honoring them. And I have called, or I looked online to see if there was a Messianic synagogue, and there was none. And then all of a sudden, I don't know how I got the number.
I don't either.
I found it.
It's kind of creepy, actually.
I'm creepy.
She just showed up on your doorstep.
You might not have a father, but you have an adopted, annoying son. He loves you all the time, huh?
Until I go on to be with my father.
All right, good.
But
Well, now you know why.
I do know why. The Lord has separated me all these years.
Yeah.
He has.
Yeah. That's good.
And I always felt very alone, very isolated. But you know what? I was very content. I never wanted to be in the in crowd. I just never did.
Yeah.
I just go about my business.
Yep.
I'll say for us,
All new stuff for you this year.
for us, the Lord still has us in church, which is extremely hard. That's one of the hardest things. I mean, the Spirit of God is the Spirit of God, and when His presence is there and the Word is there, it's Him. But then the rest of it, hey, we'll put your Christmas tree up, all that. But we're having the Easter egg hunt, and it's like I think I'm older now. So, but yeah, it's the separation part. Even though we're there, we're still separate. We're still apart.
We started coming here, and we were still going to church. And I told my husband, I said, I don't want to go there anymore. I said, this is Christmas time, and they're going to be celebrating, and I don't want to. And I think it's a little bit hurt. And he says, well, just tell me what you want me to do, which made me feel really bad because I don't want to go there. I don't want to be surrounded by that, and they're going to have Christmas parties and everything. But I also told my two daughters about, coming here. And guess what? They were excited for me.
Nice.
My oldest daughter, she really wanted to know if there was some place over there where she lives in Santa Rosa Beach area. But there's nothing there for her. But
Well,
they were both excited for me.
very exciting. Who else has a question or comment?
in studying the Torah, and the more we do this, the more years we do this, I start to understand that our Father, He does a lot of separating. Yeah. And when you follow the life of the children of Israel, it's a constant separating, but it's also a struggle not to reunite. I was reading about Jacob and his boys this week with the incident at Shechem, and they wanted to come in and make a covenant with them, but we struggle all the time. And I know, for me, this stuff with the holidays is not to be insensitive or anything, but it's not a big deal for me. As one of those people we talked about earlier, I can quit doing this today and it doesn't affect me. But I know and I realize that I've got kids and grandkids that this is something they've experienced since the day they were born, and it's a hard time to separate that. But I realize in my heart, in my heart of hearts, that what God separates, no matter how much we struggle with it, we can't put that back together. And that's something that we have to, in this walk that we're doing, we're just going to have to get to that.
You want to let go.
Yeah. But it's really hard to let go, because there's a lot of things out there, and we don't want to let go of them. We talked about the norm liking the Christmas trees and stuff. That's, for years that was something that we did to get people to see Christmas lights and stuff. And now you've got these grandkids that's going to come over and they're going to say, Papa, we're going to go see Christmas lights. Mm-hmm. No, we're not. We don't do that anymore. But that's a struggle. Yeah. And I know it just sounds like I'm just dragging on and on with it, but it is a struggle. This is one of the bigger things. And then I've struggled with this Hanukkah because I've not had a really good, clear picture of it in the Word. Mm-hmm. And that's why I'm really thankful for this today, because we've been able to see more of it and see why we did this. Mm-hmm. But the festivals and the Sabbath, to me, that's easy to see in the Word. Yeah. And that's easy to show somebody else.
Yeah, right.
But this Festival of Lights, the Hanukkah thing, the dedication thing, I think still, even with this information that I've got today, it's something that's going to be harder to convey out there to those people.
Right. So I'll tell you one other Hanukkah tradition that we have, and the reason I slipped is because of this, is that we actually, if Hanukkah is close enough to Christmas, we actually go as a family and look at Christmas lights. Because they're beautiful and we enjoy them. There's one place in particular that was in Arkansas, and we're trying to find, I think we found a place this past year in downtown Macon this year, is that we can drive in those places, and it's one of those places, actually there's two downtown, that you can tune in your radio and listen to, Siberian or whatever, and then watch the lights as they're doing it and everything, and it's just enjoyable for us, and it has no connection to anything necessarily pagan or anything like that. It's just people doing what they do and doing their best to have a great commercial holiday and brightening people's lives, and so we take advantage of that. We enjoy it as a family, as a tradition. Jim?
Yeah, this discussion takes me back to Matthew chapter 4. Let me read this to you. In leaving Nazareth, he came and dwelt in Capernaum, which is upon the seacoast, in the borders of Zebulun and Naphtali, that it might be fulfilled that which was spoken by Elias the prophet, saying, the land of Zebulun and the land of Naphtali, by the way of the sea, beyond the Jordan, Galilee of the Gentiles, the people which sat in darkness saw a great light, and to them which sat in the region and shadow of death, light is sprung up. So, no matter if we're celebrating Hanukkah, we're celebrating Shabbat, you go into a restaurant, you don't eat pork, you don't eat the shrimp, you can't help but to be a light. Just like Yeshua said that he's the light of the world, but he also insinuated about us being light and salt. Right. So, wherever we're at in society, because we're different, it's going to shine. That's going to shine. You can't help it. Mm-hmm. So, The smart way to do it is to not confront people and let them see your light and come to the light. So,
I have met a lot of people that don't eat pork and have been very hateful. So everything that we do must be done in love.
Exactly.
Everything we do must be done in humility and kindness. Because I don't know about you, but I've met lots of people that have kept the Sabbath, they don't eat pork, and that are very not nice people.
Right.
And how he brought this to my attention was I met this lady on Facebook, and I called her a Torah terrorist. I'm sorry for putting those two words together, but that's how it was. And I went to Abba and I said, "Oh, this woman, she's just," and he says, "This is what you're doing to your family. You're taking my word, you're taking my Torah, you're bam, trying to shut. What did I do this? Because I was so eager, but he opens eyes and he reveals, and he guides and leads. We cannot force anything on anyone because love, we're not supposed to take the kingdom by force. That is a Christian cavalry, what they did with the wars, the Crusades. It's love. Yeah. It's love. And I have been guilty, and I don't want to be guilty anymore. I don't, because I'm not any better than anybody else. I'm not.
And we have to have that in mind before we can ever be a light.
I just wanted to say, just always be open, because for 2 years now, we got invited to speak to 3 different classrooms at school. And sure, they're studying Christmas traditions around the world. But we agreed and went and talked. Of course, the first thing we told the kids, this does not take the place of Christmas. We shared about Hanukkah. I made on paper Hanukkah, so they all took something home to show their family. I ordered dreidels off Amazon, big bags, and we made potato latkes. And I saw all the kids come to us, when are we going to do that again? Can you bring that back? So there's lots of opportunity there, and we didn't ask for that. Right. So just always be open. Don't be like, oh, well, that's not a replacement for Christmas. I mean, I didn't tell them that, but I did tell the kids when we got there, because, we got invited in, and sometimes it's just there. You just got to be willing to go. So 3 classes of kids, and they all took dreidels and latke recipes and homemade Hanukkahs
homemade Hanukkahs
where you
that
turn
you
it
can spin, and every time you turn it, it lights up another candle. It's got
it
yellow in the back, it's white in the front, there's cut out candles, and you spin it in the back and it lights up another candle, and you spin it again, it lights up another candle.
Yeah. So the shamash stays lit, and then as you turn the half yellow, half white circle, it lights it up. So they all took it home to their families. So
it was a good craft for the kids to do while we were
but
there.
they're learning Christmas traditions around the world, but that got us in the door.
Got us in to do Hanukkah.
Yeah, very cool.
So
it's not that Jewish. It's we showed them where it was in the Bible. It's just not that Jewish thing. It's God's thing.
And listen to, there was an old lady who swallowed a dreidel. Oh, they love that.
What?
There's a lady that reads books, story time books, and she reads. There was an old lady who swallowed a dreidel, and it's so funny the way she reads it. And I mean, she reads it really fast, and it's really cute. So that's something else I enjoy.
I haven't heard that. But
it is cute.
Look up story time, kid time, or something. Anyway, the way she reads it, it's just something on YouTube.
That's funny. And there's all kinds of books they've created, around Hanukkah. One that's quite hilarious that my children appreciate. Some people may not appreciate it, but it's called a Hanukkah bush. And it's the story of a Gentile who's trying to peddle his last Christmas tree to the Jews of Helm. Okay, and so he comes by there and was trying to sell him the tree, and they're like, we're Jewish, we don't celebrate Christmas. He goes, well, it's not a Christmas tree. It's a Hanukkah bush. He goes, what are you talking about? That's crazy. It's the latest rage in America. And he tells them all how to do it and everything. They end up buying it, and everything goes wrong. And it's just a hilarious little story. So. But they learn a life lesson from it.
I got a question for you.
Yes.
When we're reading in John chapter 10, they're pressing him, saying, are you the Messiah? Just come out and tell us. Mm-hmm. I've heard that when they took the stones of the altar and dismantled the altar because they were defiled by the pig's blood, they kind of stored them over to the side. And they said when Messiah comes, they'll they didn't want to discard of them
Right.
because they're holy, but then they didn't want to use them because they were profaned by pig's blood.
Right.
And so Messiah will tell us what to do. Is there truth to that? I don't know.
Let me just read the passage from 1 Maccabees.
Okay.
If I can find it real quick. I think I know where it is. It is in right here. Actually, it was right above where I started in the second session this afternoon. Let me just back up a little bit. Okay. They cleansed the holy places and took away the stones that had been defiled into an unclean place. And he considered about the altar of burnt offerings that had been profaned, what he should do with it. And a good counsel came into their minds to pull it down, lest it should be a reproach to them, because the Gentiles had defiled it. So they threw it down. And they laid upon the stones in the mountains of the temple in a convenient place, until there should come a prophet and give answer concerning them. Okay? So that's exactly what you're talking about there.
Yeah.
And I meant to find this and write it down before I came, but this book right here on Hanukkah, it's through Art Scroll. It's called Hanukkah, Its History, Observance, and Significance. He actually talks about a tractate in the Mishnah, or actually in the Talmud, I think, that discusses where that is put and what's supposed to happen with it. So,
Is it often theorized that those stones were placed in Solomon's colonnade, where Yeshua is walking?
I don't think that's the location that they're saying. But
do you? I mean, is it in your opinion that they're pressing him because? I mean, tell us: are you the Messiah? Are you the one who's supposed to tell us what we're to do with the stones that were defiled? Like here at Hanukkah time. Like
that could be a connection. I mean that may be a little stretch, but I don't think that's too far stretched that we can't make that connection.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I think that's somewhat reasonable. So that's a cool little theory you got going on there.
I think the connection you can make with Hanukkah also is the fact the rabbis were teaching that week about the good shepherds of Israel, talking about the Maccabees.
Yeah.
And they've been teaching people all week long about that. Here comes Yeshua, I am the good shepherd. So that he made the connection with the Maccabees at that time.
Yeah.
He is the good shepherd.
Right. That's good.
If you go to Luke 19:40, it says that this was when he was coming in the village on the donkey, and you get to 38. Blessed is the sovereign King who has come in the name of Adonai, peace in heaven and esteem in the highest. And some of the Pharisees from the crowd said, Teacher, rebuke your taught ones. But he answered them, saying, I say to you that if these shall be silent, the stones will cry out. And I've always related that pile of stones to that story that you told. I don't know if it's true or not, but pretty neat. There's a pile of stones somewhere.
Yeah.
Maybe it's that pile of stones that he's talking about, because you know, the blood and the sweat. You know.
Well, and like Elijah healed the altar, or he rebuilt the altar on Mount Carmel. And it's like he regathered those stones, and it says he rebuilt the altar. It's kind of a picture of, you know, when Messiah comes, he will rebuild an altar. And he will regather stones to build, you know, not him directly, but through the agent of the Kohanim, the altar will be rebuilt. It's kind of the job of the Messiah is to resume that worship system. One of his jobs. It's a very Elijah-esque kind of role of healing the altar, rebuilding the altar on the mountain of the Lord.
When you have a synagogue, do you have like an altar that people come to and kneel there?
No. The closest thing to that would be a bima, which when we do Torah services out here, have you ever noticed there's a little table with like a blue tablecloth over top of it? And when I get the Torah out and I lay it on that table, that's the closest thing. Because the synagogue is supposed to be a small tabernacle. It's supposed to be a model of the tabernacle. So you have different components that represent aspects of the tabernacle or the temple. It's not supposed to replace or usurp the tabernacle or the temple, but it's supposed to train people who are living in the diaspora, living out, surrounding countries. Supposed to train Jewish people, non-Jewish people if you ever get the opportunity to go to the temple, this is what it might feel like, and this is what it might look like. So there's going to be an altar, there's going to be the Holy of Holies, and then there's going to be the Ark of the Covenant inside the Holy of Holies. There's going to be a Ner Tamid hanging above that. So there's this aspect that, yeah, like the synagogue is a representative model of the tabernacle. It's a little sanctuary, but it's not meant to replace that. So no, there is no altar like you would see like in a Christian like Pentecostal church or something like that where you come and kneel at it. But how those became called altars, I'm not sure, but the bima is about the closest thing to it, and that's where a chazan, a prayer leader, would stand and offer the offerings of his lips or her lips and sing those up from the bima. That's probably the closest thing within a synagogue setting to symbolize an altar in that sense.
Well, that's actually the table at your house. You can see that.
Yeah, that's another.
That's the closest thing you can get to the altar.
Right. Yeah, and your home is very much, like he's saying, your home is very much a tabernacle or a temple, because you have different levels of holiness and sanctity. With your bed, your bed being probably the holiest part, the Holy of Holies. And so, you let certain people into your home. Like, I would let a UPS man into my living room to set a package down in my living room. But I'm not going to let him come back into my room, like, that's just weird. But there's certain people, so there's only certain, just like in the temple or tabernacle, there was only certain people who could go into different levels of the temple, and so I would invite a total stranger to come sit at my table and eat, but I'm not going to let him go pillage around in my bedroom, or sleep in my bed that night. So there's different levels of holiness that are involved. It's a good point.
Along with that, you talked about the salt this morning a little bit, but you talked about a certain portion of it. But there's a salt covenant that relates to that table being an altar. But in the Middle Eastern mindset, if somebody invites you in to eat with them and they don't put salt on the table, you may not want to stay there. So, in other words, when you come here and you have salt with one another, you're actually making a covenant together. It's no different than when the angels came into Sodom and Gomorrah, and
According to Midrash, that's one of the things that the problem was that Lot's wife would not provide salt for them, and that's why she was turned to the pillar of salt.
Wow. That's neat. Never heard that before. Never did either.
And also, if my memory serves me correct, and I could be completely off on this, but I think the altar that's in the front of the church buildings originated with Charles Finney, I believe. I think so.
What came to my mind as I might burst up at you, if you guys ever want to go back and read it, it's about he's a living stone and we are living stones. So that pile of stones is so beautifully represented to Mashiach, who we are in him, and we become a temple of the Most High. That's that he would habitate the whole and knock at the door of your heart, right? So there's so many things you could go with this, but I have a question about that. I recently just got my apartment, right? And I haven't been in an apartment in so long. And both my older kids go right to my bedroom and pop in my bed. I'm like, what are you doing? And they're like, well, why? And I'm like, but you don't understand. You can't just do that, because it's by the back door. And I knew why I was uncomfortable, but I couldn't put it in words. What's the big deal? And I'm like, oh my gosh. I want to go like a do not nurse time, but there is like, you have the
sanctity.
You have the Mishkan pattern when you look at it. The closer you get, the more intimate you get.
Who has a question?
A comment about family.
Okay.
When I first started studying Messianic, I've been doing this about 10 years. I thought everybody needed to. I thought this was so neat. Everybody needed to do this. I didn't realize that it was something you were called to do. And after I got a fairly good grasp of it, I went to my oldest sister and tried to explain to her and her husband what this was all about. I mean, I thought, hey, y'all need this. Y'all got to get on board with this. And after I left, she waited a couple of years to tell me this, but she said, my heart was so grieved after you left. I thought you had come up with some kind of cult. And she said, I went to my Sunday school teacher and talked to her about this. She said, "Thank goodness that she knew what you were doing." And she said, "I told her that you was worshiping some guy named Yeshua."
That's hilarious.
And she said, "My Sunday school told me, Elaine, he's on to something." He knows.
Yeah.
He knows what he's doing here. He's actually been called to a higher understanding, and you need to back off of him a little bit.
Well,
Wow.
she needs to get on board with that.
Yeah,
Years
it's
ago.
been several years ago. She said, and then I realized that it's something you're called to do, and not something I can force my opinion on. But she thought I was then joined up into a cult following some guy named Yeshua.
So Daniel Lancaster, you guys know who I'm talking about?
Yes.
He tells a story about when he first was just wrestling through the concept of Messianic Judaism. He's like his brother at that time was one of his brothers was a pastor, and he always looked to his older brother, and he always looked to him for advice and stuff. And so he calls his brother up. He says, "Okay," he says, "You're not going to believe this. I just talked to somebody who said that the New Testament is supposed to be just a continuation of the Old Testament. And all the things are just supposed to transition over, and it's just supposed to be the same sort of thing with Judaism and stuff like that." He said, "Isn't that just the craziest thing?" And he said his brother just sort of sat there for a minute. He said he does that when he's thinking, the wheels are spinning. And he says, "Well, I guess that's really the way it's supposed to be." And he goes, "What?" And then that really got him where he had to confront the issue. But he just, when he first heard it, it was unthinkable. But then it was validated just like this, by a family member, and then he had to confront it. And then now he's a incredible Messianic teacher.
The thing is that, I'm looking back now, and I'm seeing that there's a lot of teachings that it's deception. There's so much deception. You're not seeing it in the eyes of a Jewish person,
Right.
and you don't understand the background,
Right.
and you're adding things that don't
Right.
belong there.
And so my caution to you is this. People do that not out of a willingness or a desire to, to deceive people. They do that just based on their ignorance. And so we have to have a lot of grace for that. A lot of grace.
No, I know that.
Yeah.
Because they love the Lord.
Yeah.
They love Jesus. They worship Him, and they're godly people.
Right.
Probably better than I am. But the thing is, now that I'm looking, I've been listening, online to rabbis.
Mm-hmm.
I'm thinking, oh my gosh.
Right.
It's
Mind blowing. Yeah.
Do you believe that you were redeemed when you were in church? I mean, like when
Yes. Yes, for sure.
I have had extreme groups of people who question every single thing Christianity is like. No,
Right.
the gospel is the gospel. Nothing can take away from the gospel. There's just no way. So I believe the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I've heard a lot of things, and that goes back to what we were talking about earlier is, what did I say? Your identity and what was it?
Relationship.
Being relational, because we're all in this together, whether or not we are. And if we have Christ in common, we have something.
Yeah.
That's the way I look at it.
Mhm.
We have this in common. We both love Him. There's levels. I mean, you think about the tortoise and the hare, right?
Mhm.
The tortoise says, look how far I got, look how back here. Who really won the race? I'm not saying that, who's going to win, but
Right.
you can pick out meat and leave the bones too.
Yeah. So I'll even go a step further in that, in saying that people can even be brought out of darkness and into light, not even being told the true gospel. Okay, because that's one of the things that I'm working to do is to help people to understand the true gospel message, where we've reduced it to the death and resurrection of Jesus and the forgiveness of sins. And so, that's what churches preach, but that's never been the gospel that he preached or his disciples preached. I mean, Paul capitalized on that to make his point, to help people understand the context of things, but the gospel has always been repent, because the kingdom of heaven is at hand. And so even without understanding that, even without knowing that, our lives were transformed in our discipleship. We've become disciples of this man named Jesus, who we recognize as the Messiah and the Savior of the world, right?
Yeah, without his resurrection, he's like anybody else. I mean, I get what you're saying. I get what you're saying.
Yeah. Were you going to say something? Question, comment? So let me just hit a couple things. So with the how-tos,
I do have one
yes,
comment.
yes.
Mainly, I guess, because I missed the last hour I was with the kids. But, as far as Hanukkah goes, it kind of relates to the gospel, I would call it the gospel of the kingdom, because you had the Maccabees had to physically fight a war with one of Satan's kingdoms.
Mm-hmm.
And so, the scripture says he came to his own, but his own received him not. Or what if he could not even have come to his own? What if there were no biblical, no Torah community where the Messiah to even come to?
Mm-hmm.
That's what Antiochus Epiphanes was about, was trying to destroy the entire community, so the Messiah couldn't even come to his own.
Right.
So he came to his own received him not, but there was a remnant there.
Yep.
And so there could not have been a remnant without a community for there to be a remnant to come out of.
Mm-hmm.
And this gospel of the kingdom is talking about a law form. And the closest that we have to that is one is ancient Israel, with like King David, King Solomon. They had a law form called the Torah. And God was their king in actuality, especially during the period of the Judges. But in modern day history, our forefathers in this country had actually made a covenant with God in exchange for his favor, that they would treat all men equally, called liberty and justice for all. And they actually were preaching that from the pulpits in this country. Our nation was birthed out of a great awakening of the move of God in this country early on. And believe it or not, what our forefathers gave us, which is, most Americans don't know this, was a biblical republic. A law form was the Bible. And we've about lost it. But that's what they gave us. And what they were in our modern day vernacular, when you think about who our forefathers were and what they were trying to accomplish, a lot of them were like we are. We could almost call them messianic, because they were trying to get back to the roots of Christianity. Because they came out of Catholicism, they came out of all those things. And they came out of the Church of England that came out.
A lot of them were Protestant reformers.
And so they had this same mindset we have. Maybe didn't have all the resources we have to get back to where we've gotten here. But they laid the foundation of this country for a biblical republic.
So, yes, you have a question?
I want you to finish with him.
Okay. I don't have anything to add to that.
Okay, well, I just kind of want to go back to what you just said. That kind of just in me, and
Sure.
I want to work it out, because when I read John 3:15, we'll start with 3:13, and no one has gone up into the heavens except he who came down from the heaven, the Son of Adam. And as Moshe lifted up the serpent in the wilderness, even so the Son of Adam has to be lifted up. Whoever is believing in him shall not perish, but have possessed everlasting life. They along by it. For Elohim so loved the world that he gave his only brought forth Son, that anyone who believes in him should not perish, but possess everlasting life. For God did not send his Son into the world to judge the world, but that the world through him might be saved. I get what you mean by repent, for the kingdom of him is near, but there's no way to the Father, so through the Son. So can you
So
explain to me what you
sure.
mean by that?
What is the gospel? What does gospel mean?
Good news.
Good news. Okay. So
Well,
does
repentance is turning towards
Yeshua mention that this is good news or gospel in his dialogue with Nicodemus?
also good news.
Where?
I don't know. I gotta go find it.
Says you must be born again.
Yes.
That's not what I'm asking. I'm not asking about being born again. I'm asking about the gospel. So here's what's happening. I'm saying one word and you're translating in another. Okay? So we're using the same words, but we have different definitions. Okay, so that's the issue. So gospel, Yeshua defines, the New Testament defines, John defines as this message, this kingdom message. Repent, for the kingdom of heaven is at hand. What we've defined as the gospel is this thing about salvation, personal salvation. Okay? And they're not necessarily the same, although they overlap. Does that make sense? They're connected.
Yeah.
And so,
sorry,
go ahead.
I guess like personal salvation for many of us is a prerequisite to the kingdom gospel. So that's a component of it. But the fuller gospel, so when Yeshua's disciples heard the word good news, they didn't think necessarily that they didn't see in their mind's eye Yeshua dying, being buried, and resurrected, and then end of story, that's the gospel. What they saw and what they would ask him was, when will you restore the kingdom of Israel? At what time? And Yeshua didn't say, oh, no, that's not the gospel. He says, he goes on to say, basically validating, yes, that is the gospel. That is the good news, that I will restore the kingdom of Israel to its high water mark, like King David, when Israel was in its glory days. That is my goal. But in order to achieve that goal, first this message has to reach to the ends of the earth, so that the fullness of the Gentiles may come in. So I'm setting the stage first of all these personal salvations, all these personal redemptions, before I can redeem a nation of people for myself and rebuild and reestablish the kingdom of Israel on earth, and I be the king, the son of David.
And the connecting factor in all of that is a king is not necessarily a king if he only has a region. He needs a people. Okay? So what Gabriel is talking about is he needs a transformed people that have given their allegiance to him to reign and rule over.
So how I see it is, we believe in him, and then we began to walk. So I see it as a two-step forward, but I don't see any other way besides that to this.
You're absolutely right.
So is that where do you understand?
But that is a component of the gospel, is personal redemption and forgiveness of sins and the transformation of your life into the conformity and likeness of him. That's one component of the gospel. The next component would be, now he's going to take his redeemed people and plant them inside his redeemed kingdom, his reestablished kingdom. That is the good news.
And so what has happened with that misunderstanding of the gospel is it ends with, I'm saved, I'm going to heaven. Bye, I'm checking out.
What did Yeshua teach us how to pray? Is that kingdom come, that will be done?
In
So-
earth as it is
It's
in
about,
heaven.
that's the kingdom theology. It's talking about government. Talking about government.
Yeah.
So is it turning towards him a matter of turning away from sin?
You would think. I mean, that's the logical conclusion.
I've stayed at the foot of the cross for a very long time in my walk, but at some point it said, "Come along," and but who that happens in everybody's life differently.
But if we think about the gospel message as we just discussed, repent for the kingdom of heaven is at hand. With that, the repentance is tied to, and especially in Yeshua's day, so what this whole message was about is he was telling people, you have the opportunity for me to set up shop now. You have the opportunity for me to set up my kingdom now and fix this world in a blink of the eye. But it requires repentance. It requires you to act, to do something, to go back to the way my Father has established from the very beginning. And not very many people are willing to do that. You know, we've got our own personal agendas, and that's where the personal salvation component has been twisted in such a way that we're not transformed for a purpose. We're transformed for being transformation alone.
Take it out of hell.
Yeah.
Sometimes.
Yeah. We got our get out of hell card. We've got our safety net, our fire insurance, whatever you want to call it. We've got that, and that's the end of it. But we are saved for a purpose, and as Paul says, we have been set free. How does he word that? It is for freedom that we've been set free. So a free person has the ability to take on responsibility that a slave does not. Okay? And so when you're a slave, you cannot. And that's why we have in our benedictions, the morning benedictions, when we were praying Shakri, thank you, Lord, for not making me a slave. Because a slave cannot fulfill the obligations that are upon a free man to contribute to the kingdom like he should.
That's why Israel had to be born as a nation in a day. They'd be taken out of slavery. So we have a free choice whether or not they were going to accept the Torah, whether or not they would accept the kingship of God. It's one of the mountains.
Yeah, you look at all of
They had to
humanity.
be free to make the choice.
Exactly.
You look at all of humanity and all of politics. We long for a king as a people. We long for. I mean, just look at politics in a global scale, and all the men just in the continent of Africa alone who proclaim themselves as king and do away with term limits. And how many of those people are completely okay with that in those countries and prop these people up? Kim Jong-il or whatever. Like, there's some crazy guys who proclaim, and we there's this part of us that craves someone to be king over us. And that is, like the book of Ecclesiastes, he's put eternity in our hearts. And I believe that the kingdom is going to be just an amazing time when we have a true and a righteous king. Like, that part of us will be completely satisfied. Like, yes, we have a king who is just. And he's not going to just say one thing and do the other. Like, he's going to be true. Yeah.
I was just going to say, Yeshua came to have us, he said, return, come back to the Father. And they said, show us the Father. And he says, if you've seen me, you've seen the Father. That's right. And, the Ruach and he and the Father are one, and he created everything for his glory. He's saying, return unto me. He hasn't changed. I was hearing that today. I was hearing that last night. I am the same, and everything will change, and everything is changing, but my word will remain. Heaven and earth and everything will pass away, but return unto me. This is the start of the walk for us, and there's so much more to come, but get overwhelmed.
Sometimes I wonder why, how God just brought me here, but why is it bringing others here?
Well, why didn't he call everybody but only Abraham? Why didn't he call other people besides Abraham? It's the rabbis tell us that it's not because he didn't call everybody. His voice went out to all the world, but only Abraham had the ears to hear. Okay? And it's the same thing as it said that at Sinai, God proclaimed the Torah to all the nations of the world because he spoke it in the 70 languages of the world, but only Israel responded affirmatively. He said Esau's descendants, the Edomites, they said, what's in the Torah? He says, why don't we want your Torah? What's in it? It says, thou shalt not kill. What are you talking about? We love to kill. It says, we can't do that. They went to so-and-so's descendants and said, what's in the Torah? Don't commit adultery. We can't do that. And it goes on the list. But Israel, he said, will you accept my Torah? And they said, we will obey and we will hear.
Before they even knew the fullness of
Exactly.
it.
We will obey and then we will hear.
The best way to render, many are called and few are chosen, and I would render it as many are called but few choose.
Yep. Or as Gabriel feels it sometimes, I've heard him say this morning, just something to remember. Many are cold but few are frozen.
I
Turn the
I'm
air on.
shivering.
Yeah,
Like,
it's all over the show.
yeah.
Yeah.
You'll turn the air on.
Yeah.
I'm shivering.
Yeah.
Just turn it off.
Yeah, and I have a big tweeter.
Oh, no, the kids. It'll warm me up for that.
One of the few things too that we have talked about in celebration of Hanukkah is, these memories. We have songs that we sing. So if you don't know Hanukkah songs, it's good to learn some Hanukkah songs. I have a little dreidel, I made it out of clay. Those are fun things to do with the kids, stuff like that. We have Hanukkah, oh Hanukkah, come light the menorah, And then we have Ma'otzu Yeshuati. We have the Rock of Ages, right? We have Ma'otzur. And there's various other things. And so, learn these songs, learn these melodies, teach them to your children. They're meaningful. Some are just, they don't have much meaning like the dreidel song. They're just fun, and they create and instill memories. That brings me to dreidels. So what's up with the dreidels? So legend says one thing, but history says another. I don't think dreidels have been around but a few hundred years. But there's a legend that says they go back to the time of Antiochus, that when the Syrian armies were persecuting the Jewish people, and they took the Torah away from them, the sages would play with the dreidels and teach the children, okay? And they would have different things. Now they have different letters on them. We'll talk about that in a second. And they would play with the dreidels and pretend they're just playing a game when they'll actually be teaching them Torah, okay? And so the dreidels today is, we have a dreidel here anywhere? Anybody have a dreidel?
No.
Okay, but a dreidel has 4 Hebrew letters on them outside of Israel, and they have a different letter at the end in Hebrew. If you buy a dreidel in Israel, I've got a dreidel from Israel that's pretty cool. So the dreidels that we have here have Nun, Gimel, Hey, and a Shin. Okay, this stands for Nes Gadol Hayasham. Okay, a great miracle happened there. But in Israel, it's Nes Gadol Hayapo, because a great miracle happened here. Okay, so you have 2 different things. It's to remember that acronym there. And so you spin the dreidel, you play the game, you win the gelt. Gelt is a pretty new invention too. I think it's only about maybe 100 years old, because it was one of these commercial things that they were using something, and then the candy makers caught on and created this gelt thing. Sufganiot. Who knows what sufganiot are? Jelly donuts. Those are always good. Now, we don't necessarily do jelly donuts in our family. Yeah, we do donuts, just regular donuts, and we make them ourselves simply. Oh, there's some dreidels.
It's actually holding a mouse, but it's a little bag that made to hold a dreidel.
There you go. Yeah. So it has pictures of dreidels on here you can see if you've never seen a dreidel before. They're a little 4-sided top that you spin. They've got these Hebrew letters on each one of them. Okay? And whatever they land on. And kids love it when they end up getting a dreidel that's actually ends up being loaded. So, well, like roll dice that are loaded. So one of my sons, he found a dreidel that, man, just about every time he spun it, it landed on Gimel. And so he was just like,
That's hilarious.
because it was out of balance,
Which means you get everything.
Exactly. And so, sufganiyot, we make fried donuts. So another tradition, let me just connect this, of Hanukkah is to really clog your arteries with fried food. Because the oil commemorates the miracle of the oil. Okay? And so what we do, one of the things that we do is our tradition is to make donuts. And what we do is we buy cans of biscuits, poke a hole in them, and fry them, Another new tradition that we just started this last year that we're going to continue doing, which was amazing, is make homemade kosher corn dogs.
Oh, wow.
That are dairy-free, so my family, we don't mix meat and dairy. And so we're going to continue that tradition. We have a friend that always made them, and she modified her recipe to not use dairy. And they turned out amazing, and they were so good. And so that will definitely be a tradition at the Huckey House for many years to come.
Don't you have to have 2 kitchens?
No, there's lots of ways around that. So it's just more difficult. So if you're rich and you can afford your kitchen, go for it.
I'm not.
we have our kitchen is extremely tiny and it's rough, but somehow we make it work.
Because they have different plates, they have.
We have two sets of two sets of dishes, basically, and 2 sets of silverware and stuff like that.
And they've never touched.
I didn't say that. So you're going to have those problems. You just got to figure out how to deal with them. So, I mean, and this is actually, it's a good example and it's a good learning thing, because God never says, He never expects perfection out of people, but He expects striving. He expects us to pick ourselves up and fix things when we make mistakes, you know? And so that's part of the learning curve as well in anything. And so we do fried donuts. We do now the corn dogs. Does anybody else have any other traditions that you guys do? Fried ice cream, seriously, nice. That's difficult.
Well, I haven't tried it yet. I just thought about it.
Oh,
You
okay.
kind of like take something and you put it like the ice cream and then you fry something. You don't necessarily have to fry the ice cream. You can throw something fried on the ice cream. You know, like the
Okay.
Mexican Spanish style.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's good stuff.
Yeah. You could use freeze your dough and all that kind of stuff, and maybe wrap all that up and refreeze it and quickly bake and stuff. Any other Hanukkah traditions that we don't know about that you guys do?
Well, we play apples to apples and ping pong.
Oh yeah,
Like we just
traditional games are great.
Just to be together.
Yeah.
And to laugh and have fun and
Now, we bought a kit that had Hanukkah games and stuff like that, and one of the things that our kids, when they were younger especially, just went crazy over is basically just musical chairs. It was called Looney Latka Chair Chase.
Oh, that's cute.
Yeah, and it's just a fun name, and the kids had fun with that. So when we were in a big group, like with our community, then we would do that and have our Looney Latka Chair Chase, and that would be, a big hit. Any other traditions?
At Mary James during Sukkot, we have a special thing that we do, and it's like musical chairs, and everybody's given a different fruit name. And then when everybody has to get up, and then we say, shake your lulaw, and everybody has to get up and move. It's a lot of fun.
Oh, that is fun. Yeah, we did. It seems like now that you mentioned that, we did something. We had some kind of musical chair type game as well. We did like Hanukkah music or something like that. There's starting to be more Hanukkah music out there available. There's not very much still, but there's starting to be more. Like we have Manisyahu that's got his song, and then we actually got some, I think, Jewgrass. There's a Jewish bluegrass band that's got some Hanukkah music out there and stuff like that.
Another thing I thought about seeing in different groups, and I've done before too, is where you have people making menorahs or
Hanukkahs.
Out of just whatever.
Yeah.
And that's a lot of fun.
Mm-hmm.
Do y'all have a gathering during the week together? Everybody get together as a congregation?
Yeah, we will have a Hanukkah party on December the 8th. We're going to have just a fun celebration here, building after Rabbi, right, December 8th?
Yeah.
After Rabbi Baruch is completed, we're just going to open up the room and just have games. There will be more being put out on that here later, but we will have a fun Hanukkah celebration. And that's towards the end of Hanukkah. I think Hanukkah ends December 10th this year. So we'll probably have, we might have like 6 lights, something like that. But we'll all light you'll bring all your Hanukkah stuff and candles, and we'll light them all here and try not to burn the place down.
So
Stress Bill out.
along the lines of spiritual traditions, I would encourage you to, if at all possible, to use that holiday of dedication to take on a new mitzvah. Okay? Maybe something you've not, done, started doing, or whatever like that, whether it's, daily prayer times or one daily prayer time, or changing an eating habit, or adding this aspect to make Shabbat more holy, maybe, putting away your phone or your device or whatever. Just pick something to increase the level of holiness of the things that you're doing and making it into a lifestyle, a pattern of your life. And use that time as a renewal of your dedication to holiness, okay? And then part of that, if you're doing your daily prayers, within the daily prayers and the grace after meals that we just got through doing, there's a special prayer called the Al-Hanasim that is added into those times of prayers. It's called Al-Hanasim, which means regarding the miracles, okay? And it's a special prayer that comes at the end of the Amidah, and then in Grace After Meal it comes in the middle here. Let me find it here. And this is what it says. It says, for the miracles and for the deliverance, and for the acts of power and for the acts of salvation, and for the battles that you performed for our fathers in those days in this season. In the days of Mattityahu, son of Yochanan the Hasmonean, high priest, and his sons, when the evil Greek empire stood against your people Israel, to cause them to forget your Torah, and to move them away from the statutes of your will. But you, in your abundant compassion, stood for them in the moment of their distress. You took on their struggle. You judged their case. You retaliated on their behalf. You handed over the powerful into the hands of the powerless, the multitude into the hands of the few, the unclean into the hands of the clean, and the wicked into the hands of the righteous, and the offenders into the hands of those who occupy themselves with your Torah. And you made a great and holy name for yourself in your world, and you performed an act of great salvation for your people Israel, and a deliverance to this very day. And afterward your children entered the inner chamber of your house, cleared out your hall, cleansed your sanctuary, and kindled lamps in the courtyards of your holy place. They appointed these 8 days of Hanukkah to give thanks and to praise your great name. Okay? Isn't that a great prayer? Yeah. And so it's good to add that into your prayer regimen if you haven't already. Whatever level of commitment of prayer that you have. I would encourage you to take on something, okay, whatever it is. You've got 3 weeks. Start thinking about that now. What can I do? How can I increase my commitment to Torah, to the mitzvot, to shining my light? Hallel, the Hallel is also recited each of those days. That's Psalm 113 to 118. Let's see. 119? No. 118. 119 is way too long. So Psalm 113 to 118 is the Hallel, and it's recited every day during Hanukkah, during the morning service, and it's traditionally sung, but you can just simply read it. As I said earlier, fasting is prohibited during these days because we want to make it a day of joy, and fasting typically doesn't bring that out in us. There's no obligation necessarily to feast, but why wouldn't you? The time for lighting candles, we need to talk about that. Okay, so when do you light the Hanukkah candles? Sundown. Okay, nightfall. Okay, except on Shabbat. You light it before sundown. You light it before you light your Sabbath candles. And Saturday night, you would light it at the time of Havdalah. You don't light it at nightfall. You would light it after nightfall when Havdalah occurs. Havdalah is the ceremony that separates the Sabbath from the coming week.
We're about to do that now.
Yep.
In a minute. Yeah, you'll see. So Havdalah is a ceremony that officially closes out Sabbath. So we don't kindle lights or flames on Shabbat.
Because of the Torah's prohibition.
Because the Torah says, do not kindle a flame on Shabbat. So we wait till pretty much this time of night, later after we do Havdalah, to light the Hanukkah, which will always happen where we have to navigate Shabbat and when to light the Hanukkah on Shabbat. We always do it before Shabbat starts and then after Shabbat ends, so we don't violate the commandment to not kindle, the prohibition of kindling a flame on Shabbat. So, yeah, you'll get the hang of it.
It just comes with repetition. I mean, there's a lot to know in everything we do in life.
Cycle, you'll get it.
Right. And so this Havdalah is something that, our kids love, and it's a meaningful, fun time for them. And it's important, especially if you have young children, because, we found out the hard way one time several years ago that we were out for Shabbat. We were somewhere, we were studying, and it was late, and one of our children fell asleep, and we put them in the car and drove home or whatever, and they didn't ever know that Shabbat was over. So the next morning they wake up and we start cooking, and it's like, Mama, you can't do that. It's Shabbat. And so we all need, but especially children, we all need delineation, okay, boundaries of distinctions. And when we light the candles on Friday night, that's a beautiful way to make a distinction that, hey, going forward, everything from here to this point forward is sacred time. And we are in sacred time, sacred space. And then when we conclude Saturday night, we do the Havdalah ceremony. And we are now transitioning. We are leaving sacred time, and we are entering the normal time of the week. And we are saying goodbye to the Sabbath. But we linger. We smell the spices of the Havdalah set. And remember that sweetness of the Shabbat, and let it linger as we enter into the new week. And we anticipate that sweetness through the week to carry us over to the next Shabbat.
I was out of the room part of the time with AG, and there were kids who may have gone over this, but did you ever mention about the mechanical, actually, which way you go when you light the
Yes, I did.
You did.
I did. So I'm assuming you are familiar with that, but you just wanted to see if it got covered. Yes.
And this is something we haven't done because our group is usually not here at the end of Shabbat, so we don't. This will be new for a lot of our people.
Gotcha.
That are just coming in.
Okay, I think that about wraps up what I have. Does anybody have any other questions?
Do you all appreciate Darren coming from Macon? And it's been a long day for you.